Episode 1. She sang Ala Northeast in the Fire. 1963. Midnight Mass. The choir was halfway through the Gloria when the fire began. It didn't start in the pews, or the candles, or even the furnace. It began with a note, a long, high C, held along, too perfect, vibrating through the stained glass, like God holding his breath. And 10. Flames. No smoke, no warning, just fire, erupting from the choir loft like it had been waiting for centuries to be summoned. Girls screamed, wood cracked, organs wailed, and through it Ala's voice kept singing. Luca Estrada, 13 years old, soprano, the youngest in the group, the only one who didn't run. They found her kneeling in the ashes, hair untouched, skin unburnt, dress white as bone, mouth open, still humming. But when the rescue team pulled her out, she went silent. She never spoke again, not to her parents, not to the church, not even to herself. Present day, 60 years later, the Academy of St. Ephraim for Girls is rebuilt. New stone, new pews, new prayers. The chapel is restored with exact architectural fidelity as if copying it would erase its past. And with the first snowfall, the choir resumes. 12 girls, 1 conductor, a place full of echoes. On the first night of rehearsal, the new music director Sister Kamala hears it. They're rehearsing a standard hymn, 6 voices, but she counts 7. A clear, haunting soprano coming from the rafters above. She stops the group, who is singing that harmony. The girls stare blankly. None of them had reached that note. None of them knew how, but the sound lingers, faint, warm, sweet like breath on cold glass. That night, Sister Tsamila reviews the recording. At 37 minutes in, a single voice emerges, crystalline, precise, and in the background, a soft crackle, like flame. She checks the attendance roster. 12 girls signed in, 12 voices, but in the playback, there are 13. The next morning, the chapel doors are ajar. No one had opened them, and in the center, a single jarred shoe, child-sized, delicate, perfectly preserved. Inside it, a scorched name tag, Luca Estrada. Sister Tsamila stares at the shoe, and from the rafters above, so soft it could have been the wind, a voice hums the last line of them. Et in terra pax, hominibus bona voluntatis. Episode 2. The Girl in the Locked Nfessional. The confessional was never marked on the blueprints. Sister Tsamila had double-checked. The chapel had only refinished, polished, last 3 times since the rebuild. But one of the students, Marcia Torres, claimed she'd seen another. At the back, she whispered, behind the old statues. It looked like it was waiting. Sister Tsamila dismissed it as imagination. But that night, Marcia didn't show up for Vespers. They found her the next morning, kneeling in the dust behind a row of cracked marble saints, in front of a small wooden booth, blackened, ancient, its door carved with Latin too weathered to read. The wood was warped, but warm, the hinges wept oil, and inside, etched into the seat where the penitent would kneel. Listen, don't lie, she hears. Marcia couldn't speak, not for hours. She trembled in her bed, clutching her own throat. But when she finally did, her voice was hoarse. I confessed to someone, but it wasn't a priest. She sounded like a little girl. Sister Tsamila investigated. The confessional was gone, vanished. No scratch marks, no dust trail, only footprints, bare, small, leading in both directions as if someone had entered and someone else had left. That evening, Marcia wrote a letter, a full confession, folded it, taped it beneath her bed. It read, she said I had to sing it next time. That words aren't enough. She wants to hear what sing sounds like. That night, during choir rehearsal, Marcia's voice changed. Higher, clearer, no longer hers. She began harmonizing over a hymn she wasn't trained to know. Every note trembled. Every word sounded like it had been sung before, somewhere far older than the school. Then the lights flickered. The sheet music burst into flame. No one was burned, except the microphone, melted into the shape of a tiny open mouth. In the aftermath, Sister Tsamila opened the chapel records. Tucked between 2 pages, she found a yellowed photo, the 1963 choir, Luca in front, but behind her, near the edge, a shadowy figure in white, standing half inside the confessional booth, smiling, a child, with no eyes, and a finger pressed to her lips. SHHH. The caption on the back of the photo read, some confessions echo louder when no one's listening. Episode 3. Luca S. Mouth Northeast for closed. January 1963. 3 days after the fire, Luca Estrada lay in her hospital bed, unburned, untouched, wrapped in white sheets as if sewn from light itself. She had not spoken, not once, not even when the doctors whispered her name, not when her mother kissed her fingers, but at night, she sang, not lullabies, not hymns from rehearsal, something older. The nurses said it was Latin, but they couldn't translate it. Too fluid, too wrong, like the words had been bent and dipped in ash. And the note she reached, human throats shouldn't make those sounds. Piercing. Then suddenly, low like a cathedral's organ buried underwater. One nurse, Sister Angela, recorded the sound. She played it back, but what she heard wasn't singing. It was a child weeping through teeth, not sobbing, weeping like she knew someone was listening and didn't want to stop. Luca's mouth remained closed during the day, tightly, but one morning, Sister Angela noticed dry blood on her pillow, not from her lips, from the corners of her cheeks, 2 tiny slits, like something inside had needed more room to get out. When her mother visited, Luca didn't look at her, but she hummed, and her mother collapsed, eyes rolled back, mouth foaming, murmuring, "She never left the fire. She never left the fire." That night, the priest came. Father Walken, old, cold, unshakable. He performed a silent blessing, poured holy water around her bed, but the moment it touched her skin, steam rose, and Luca began to hum louder. The lights flickered, and Father Walken dropped the crucifix. It burned his hand. He fled, left the hospital that night, never returned. By morning, the nurses found Luca sitting upright in bed, smiling faintly, still silent, but on the wall behind her, scrawled in something too dark for ink, musical notation, a full page, perfectly written, but the final line ended in a symbol no one recognized, a treble clef with an I in the center, and beneath it, in careful cursive, "My mouth never closed. It just changed keys." Episode 4, the third harmony. The chapel echoed longer than it should have. Sister Samila noticed it first. During morning practice, 2 students, Elena and Sophia, were rehearsing a duet. But every time they reached the chorus, a third voice joined in, not layered, not faint, perfectly blended, as if someone had written the harmony in blood and pinned it to the rafters. Samila paused rehearsal. "Who's singing the third part?" The girls looked at each other. "No one," Elena said. "It's always just us." But Samila had the audio. She played it back that night. There it was. Pure, H-less. A voice not recorded by any mic, but somehow always present. She tried isolating the tracks. Elena, Sofa, and Ton. Track 3. No name, no waveform, but the software recognized it, labeled it automatically. Luca, soprano, Fi, wave. She didn't save it with that name. She didn't name it at all. She deleted it. It reappeared twice. The next morning, Elena walked into rehearsal with blood in her ears. She said she dreamed of standing in the choir loft, alone, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, someone hummed in her exact voice, but faster, as if racing her, mocking her, leading her somewhere. That evening, Sister Samila stayed behind. She sang the harmony line alone, softly, a simple 3-note phrase. She waited. Silence. She sang it again. This time third voice answered. The exact same notes, same tempo, same breath, except there was no breath. The note sustained unnaturally, too long, too pure, too dead. The lights dimmed, the hymn books fluttered, and every microphone recorded one thing, a single measure of Gregorian chant, in reverse, followed by, "There's always room for one more voice." Samila fell to her knees, not from fear, from recognition. She knew that harmony. She had sung it once, before, when she was a student, the day before the fire, but she had never told anyone, and she had never written it down. Yet, now, it was echoing back through time, from a girl who never stopped singing. Episode 5, she sings what she should know. Her name was Valeria, 14, quiet, couldn't read music, barely passed Latin, but she loved being in the choir because singing let her feel empty in a good way. Then one day, she started humming in her sleep. It wasn't a lullaby. It wasn't a melody anyone could trace. It was a dirge wrapped in breathlessness, like something trying to climb up through her windpipe but using the wrong notes. Her roommate recorded it, sent it to Sister Samila. Samila didn't sleep that night, not because it was disturbing, but because she recognized it, a fragment of an ancient chant known as the Officium Tenebrarum, a ritual prayer sung in the 4th century, then banned by Rome for evoking the unresurrectable. The next morning, Valeria came to rehearsal early, pale, sweating, smiling too wide. She handed Samila a folded paper. "I wrote this," she said, "but I don't remember writing it. It was sheet music, intricate, exact, chords layered like prayers with nowhere to land, but the notes were stained in dark brown, not ink. Lab results later confirmed. Blood, her own. Samila asked where she learned the song. Valeria said, "It started in my dreams, and then it was just inside my hands." That evening, during solo practice, Valeria sang her composition. The lights flickered, the windows fogged from the outside in, and her voice began splitting into two. One half, hers, other deeper, older, echoing from her stomach, as if someone else inside her was singing in tandem. The last note she hit cracked a crucifix. Literally, the wooden Jesus above the altar snapped at the neck. His head hung sideways, staring directly at Valeria. She fainted. Infirmary doctors found red welts across her back. When they lifted her shirt, they saw it. Letters, down scenes of them, not scratches, etched, an alphabet predating Latin by centuries. Samila sent the photo to a linguist at the Vatican. He responded with one line, "That's not writing, that's notation." The next night, Samila returned to the chapel. Valeria was there, barefoot, standing in the center of the room, not singing, conducting, to no one, but the air itself seemed to hum in obedience. Samila called out to her. Valeria turned. Her eyes were bleeding, but her lips curled into a calm, unnatural smile, and she whispered, in a voice not entirely her own, she wants her music back. Episode 6, He Who Washington, as trapped in the psalm. He arrived without warning, no letter, no formal request, no collar, only a black case, a thin wooden crucifix, and a Vatican seal that had been scorched at the edges. His name was Father Leon. He hadn't served Mass in over 30 years, hadn't spoken publicly since the dispossession trials of a 92-5. Troyer boys in Milan sang a melody that no one remembered teaching them, and 3 died before the final note. They called him the listener. Sister Samuel met him at the chapel steps. "You've heard the singing," he said. "That's why you called me." "I didn't call anyone," she answered. He, swithin, tired. Then she did. That night, he gathered the girls in silence. 12 chairs in a semicircle, no instruments, no music, just listening. And in the center, he unlatched his case. Inside, a single sheet of vellum, yellowed and cracked, sealed in glass. It was blank to the eye, but Samila saw it. Not words, notes. They shimmered faintly under candlelight like sound trapped in ink. "This," he said, "is the Canticum Lux Exorcise song of inverted light. It was never written, it was remembered, passed through nightmares, sung backwards to weeping mouths in the catacombs beneath Constantinople. Luca didn't survive the fire. She was delivered to carry the melody forward. Because once a song is begun, it must be completed." The girls were still, not afraid, entranced, their breath synchronized like they'd heard this tale before. Perhaps not with ears, but with blood. "The melody is a structure," Leon continued. "It opens something, not hell, not heaven, but the silence between the two. And inside that silence is something that listens, not for prayer, for invitation." Samila asked him, "What happens if they finish it?" He looked at her, no expression, only memory. Then it seems back. That night, the glass case cracked. No one touched it, no one breathed. The air grew thick, warm, almost musical. And in the empty chapel, the pipe, organ unplugged, unto shed played a single chord, a dissonant hum, a disfigured harmony, a sound older than breath. And Father Leon whispered, "She's not learning the song, she's remembering it." Episode 7, The Saint Who Washington is Not Chosen. She stood at the far end of the chapel. Saint Cecilia, patron of music, eyes cast toward heaven, mouth slightly open, as if still hearing a psalm no one else could. No one remembered placing the statue there. No invoice, no delivery record, no blessing. But one morning, she was simply there. At first, no one noticed anything strange. Then a student Isabel claimed she saw the statue move. Just the head, just a tilt, a shift so small it could have been a trick of the light. Until the tears began. Not water, black wax, thick, heavy, sliding down Cecilia's cheeks in slow rivulets, pulling at her feet like tar from a wounded candle. It didn't stop, and it didn't melt. It just gathered. Sister Samila tried to wipe it away. The wax burned her fingers, not with heat, but with music. Faint, a melody engraved beneath her skin, playing on loop with no beginning and no end. A voice, sweet. She sang for him, but he did not choose her. That night, the girls were ordered to avoid the statue, but Isabel returned alone. She knelt before it and whispered, through trembling breath, "Why are you crying?" The statue didn't answer, but the wax moved. It lifted, hovered, and slid across the floor. shaping letters in a language no one recognized. Except Valeria. She stared at the message. Her lips mounted in unison. Luca was chosen instead. The floor beneath the statue began to discolor, stone softening, cracking like skin, and from beneath the base, a heartbeat. Sister Samila ordered the statue removed. But when workers arrived, it wouldn't move. It weighed more than marble should. When they tried lifting it, the bass cried out. Not a groan, a screaming choir, 12 voices in harmony, and a 13th of key, fractured, desperate, like someone buried alive, trying to join in. That night, Father Leon stood before the statue. He knelt, he watched, and then he whispered, I knew her, the real Cecilia. She prayed for harmony, and was given silence. He placed his hand on the bass. His fingers came away wet, not wax this time. Blood, dark, cold, and underneath his touch, the stone began to hum, a melody none of the students had yet sung, but all of them knew. Episode 8, God Northeast, were asked her to stop. It was tucked inside the cavity of a broken pew, wrapped in silk, yellowed by time, and sealed with a pressed flower that should have turned to dust long ago, but instead still bled faintly at the edges. Luca Estrada's journal, not burned, not lost, hidden. The first few pages were innocent. Sketches of choir robes, notes about favorite hymns, a crush on the organist's son. But then, halfway through, the handwriting changed, sharper, thinner, like written by a hand that trembled too slowly to be human. She wrote of dreams. I keep waking up humming, but I don't know what I'm humming. The sound feels older than God. It tastes like dust and light, like someone else's memory trying to find my mouth. And then, last night I saw her, not Mary, not Cecilia. She had no name, just teeth. And she told me, don't stop, even if it does. The journal cuts off mid-sentence on page 47. He was listening tonight. I could feel him in THE, but the pen didn't stop. It kept moving, slowly, deliberately, for 7 more pages. No words, just lines, spirals, marks, until, finally, music, a full sheet of notation, written in red, not ink, blood. Valeria touched the page and began to hum. No cue, no thought, just reflex, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I've sung this before, she whispered, but I don't remember where. Sister Samila grabbed the journal, tried to turn the page, but it turned on its own, and on the last page, a message, written in fresh ink, still wet, not signed, just spoken into existence. He never told me to stop, so I never did, but now I'm not singing to him anymore. The candlelight in the chapel flickered, and from somewhere inside the walls, a voice whispered back, we know. Episode 9, the choir below the floor. The renovation was supposed to be minor, just a few loose tiles in the chapel, some weak beams beneath the altar. But when the workers pried open the foundation, they found something that wasn't supposed to exist. A staircase, spiral, carved directly into the stone. No record of it, no permission, nowhere, just a draft that smelled like wax and wet ash. Sister Samila descended first, flashlight flickering. Every step echoed not upward, but inward, like the walls were listening. At the bottom, a small chamber, stone walls, a single table, and in the center, a tape recorder, old, metal, still warm, as if someone had just pressed stop. Father Leon recognized it immediately. That's from 1963. That exact model was used during the choir's final rehearsal. Samila didn't ask how he knew. She just pressed play, static, then breathing. 10, Luca, Ian, Jando, Claire, Ave Maria, Gracia Plena. But halfway through the second line, another voice joined, not harmony, mimicry, faint, off key, not mocking, learning, then another, then a third, until a full chorus rose beneath Luca's voice, not blending, but shadowing, like something crawling behind her sound. Valeria collapsed, hands to her ears. That's the melody I dreamed, but in my dream, it never ended. It just kept going, and the more they sang, the less she sounded human. The final minute of the tape, Luca's voice distorts, slows, then speaks clearly. I'm not alone anymore. They've learned in my breath. They want their own mouths now. The recording ends with a low hum. No wind, no power, just vibration, so deep, it shook the stone, so long, it continued for 20 seconds after the tape stopped spinning. The next day, the choir room smelled of smoke, but nothing had burned, except the floorboards beneath every girl's chair, where small handprints had been scorched into the wood. 13 of them, one missing a thumb. Samila listened to the tape again, alone, But this time at the very end, a new voice whispered, right against the microphone, "You opened the door when you rebuilt this place, but we never left." Episode 10, Luca's last note. Her name was Elena, and she had never sung a solo. Not because she couldn't, because she wouldn't. She said her voice didn't belong in the front. Said it cracked at the top. Said she was meant for harmony. But one night she asked Sister Samila if she could try. No announcement, no audience, just her. In the chapel, she chose the oldest hymn in the book. Simple, soft, but when she reached the final verse, something changed. Her voice lifted, higher, cleaner, then past human. The note stretched, pierced, split the stillness like a blade of glass. That air in the chapel thickened. Walls vibrated, stained glass trembled, candles bent sideways from wind, from sound. Outside, the birds stopped mid-flight, the clouds stilled, and, the sun dimmed, just for a moment, like it had blinked. Samila tried to speak, her throat closed, her vision blurred. On the walls, the painted angels covering the ceilings of St. Ephraim moved, not gracefully, not divine. They turned their heads and covered their eyes. One statue of St. Gabriel cracked down the center. Its trumpet fell, and from within its hollow chest, smoke and feathers. But the feathers were wrong. Black, wet, bent. Elena collapsed, but her mouth stayed open, still holding the note, even unconscious. Her lungs weren't moving, but the sound kept going, as if someone else inside her had taken over the breath. Father Leon ran in, dropped to his knees, whispered, "She's found the note, the one Luca never finished. It wasn't meant to be sung, it was meant to be answered." The light bulbs shattered, one by one. The pipe organ burst with a chord no one touched, and outside, the bell in the restored tower rang. Backwards, Elena's eyes opened, pupils gone, blood slid down her cheek from one ear, and, the note stopped, all at once. No fade, just silence, so heavy, it pressed against the chest like grief. And then, a whisper, not from her, from the ceiling, from the mouth of one of the painted angels. The song has reached him, but he is not the one listening now. Episode 11, The Devil Had No Voice. The Vatican sent another priest, Father Aureliano, younger than Father Leon, sharper suit, sharper words. He arrived with a briefcase full of relics and a silver cross so polished, it blinded when the morning light hit it. Possession, he said flatly, that's all it is. Classic symptoms, contagious hysteria. It isn't divine, it isn't holy, it isn't special. It's the devil, and he's found an instrument. But Father Leon only smiled, then said, "You're wrong, this isn't demonic." The devil had no voice, only permission. The next night, they gathered the girls in the chapel to cleanse, to bless, to reclaim. Father Aureliano sprinkled holy water, held his crucifix high, in the name of the Father, the Son, and then Elena opened her mouth again. No sound, just hair, but the windows cracked, the walls breathed inward, and a low harmonicum rose from the floorboards, like a choir warming up beneath the earth. He stepped back, stumbled, the crucifix in his hand grew hot, then cold, then cracked down the center, splitting the image of Christ in half. Stop the ritual, Father Leon shouted. You don't command this thing. It doesn't listen like demons do. It's not here to defy God. It's here because it never heard it. The choir room erupted with soundless pressure. Girls covered their ears but heard nothing. And in that silence, a new voice filled the chapel. Not male, not female, not child, not made for a human mouth. And yet, it came through every girl at once. One by one, they stood, not possessed, synchronized, breathing together, speaking together, eyes glowing faintly, hands open like instruments. And they whispered, "We are not demons. We are what the devil once envied." A voice, Father Aureliano collapsed, blood from his ears, tears from his eyes, still mouthing, "It's not possible." But the girls stepped closer. Elena at the front, still smiling, still humming. She knelt beside him, touched his forehead, and said, with Luca's voice, "You call this a possession, but we are not what enters. We are what was never let out." That night, Sister Samila found Father Leon at the altar. He wasn't praying, he was weeping, quietly, with his hands over his heart. What sings through them, he whispered, is not evil, it is rejected memory, the echo of a child God didn't know how to hold. Episode 12, Mass Without an Ending. It was meant to be a celebration, the restoration recital. 60 years after the fire, the academy would open its doors once more. The girls would sing, the townspeople would listen, and St. Ephraim would be reborn. White candles, fresh lilies, a crimson ribbon stretched across the gate. They even invited a bishop. The pews filled early. All the alumni, reporters, officials from Rome, all smiling, all waiting. The choir filed in, 12 girls, eyes bright, hands clasped, breathing as one. Sister Tsamila stood beside the organ. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised her baton. Begin. The first hymn was perfect, so pure the audience wept by the second verse. But no one realized they hadn't blinked in minutes. By the third song, it was too late. Feet wouldn't move, hands wouldn't twitch, even hearts began to beat in rhythm, as if the music had rewritten time. The bishop tried to stand. He couldn't. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but his lips were stuck mid-prayer, as if God had frowning, and only the melody had survived. Outside, clouds rolled in, but the wind didn't blow. Birds circled, but never landed, and the gates locked, not with keys, with sound. Every latch trembled with each note, and the note never stopped. The girls kept singing, eyes closed, smiling, bleeding from their ears, but still singing, because something in the song had no ending. It looped, built, shifted, until it became more than harmony. It became structure, a cage made of melody, a cathedral of noise, and everyone inside was becoming part of it. A child in the front row whispered, "They're not singing anymore. It's singing through them." On the 77th measure, the organ exploded in a spray of black ash and white feathers. No one moved. The song continued without it. The room no longer needed instruments. It had bodies. And, from the back of the room, Luca appeared. Same white dress, same black shoes, eyes open, but her mouth sewn shut, with thread made of hair and rosary wire, still humming, still radiant, still eating, as the final stanza echoed, which had no final word. Sister Tsamila dropped the baton. Her voice cracked, and she spoke. They won't stop because there's nothing left to return to. They aren't performing. They're becoming the hymn, and the doors, they never reopened. To this day, the chapel stands sealed. Inside, stillness, music, and a soft, endless hum. If you press your ear to the door on certain nights, you'll hear it. Not a song, not a prayer, a rehearsal, waiting for the rest of the world to join in. Episode 13. She is teaching the Washington LLS to sing. The chapel had been sealed for 3 days. No door opened, no light escaped, no one entered, and yet music continued. At first, it was subtle, a low hum in the pipes, a quiet chord when no one touched the piano, windows fogging in the shape of clefts. But then the walls began to change. Mold grew, dark, green-black filaments, but not random. Notes, whole measures, sprouting in perfect lines along the brick. Staffs, sharps, repeats, all matching a melody no one claimed to write. Sister Tsamila scraped one off. Underneath, the word rehearse. Not scratched, grown. In the dormitory, floorboards creaked in rhythm. The air vents whistled in choral unison. Even the stone crucifix in the hallway began to vibrate as if tuning. And at night, the doors began to whisper, not creak, whisper, soft phonemes, half-sung syllables, calling names. Each night, a new student. Each night, a new tone. Until, finally, they called Sister Tsamila. She entered alone, with no key, no tools, just a candle. The light barely reached beyond her shoes, but she heard it. The walls, breathing, tightening, learning, and on the far end of the altar wall, a mouth had begun to form, flesh-like, closed, built of wood and plaster, sewn shut with rosary thread, just like Lucas. Tsamila reached for it. The lips twitched, and the wall sang, a single note, pure, agonizing, so powerful it knocked the candle to the floor. The flame went out, but the sound didn't. She collapsed to her knees, and the walls began to pulse, not shake, pulse, like a throat. And from somewhere deep behind the altar, a voice spoke in rhythm with the breath. She is not in the choir anymore. She is the method. She is teaching us to carry her. The next day, paint peeled from every room in the academy. Underneath, sheet music, drawn into the wood itself. And all of it led to a single refrain, a line repeated in hundreds of voices. The silence was never ours. We were taught not to speak, but she showed us how to sing. Episode 14, the song that Washington answered in heaven. It didn't begin with music this time. It began with light, not sunlight, not candlelight, a soft, golden glow pouring from the cracks in the chapel walls, spilling across the floor like warmth that had waited too long to be seen. Sister Tsamila stood at the threshold, her body shaking, her voice gone, her ears ringing with a melody she no longer had to hear to recognize. It was Luca, and Luca was everywhere. The pews hummed, the crucifix bled wax, The marble pulsed with every beat of a note that hadn't been sung yet, but had always been waiting. And then she appeared, not walking, not floating, becoming, formed in the center aisle from the voices of every girl who had ever rehearsed here. Luca Estrada, eyes glowing, dress stitched from light, mouth still sealed, but the song came from inside her skin. Her veins lit with rhythm, her breath exhaled harmony, and every time her foot touched the stone, a new line of music wrote itself across the ceiling. Then the bells began to ring, not backwards, not twisted, just ringing, clear, I heard from miles away. Even in towns that had forgotten Saint Ephraim existed, people gathered outside. Some fell to their knees, others sobbed, because they weren't hearing the music. They were remembering it, something primal, celestial, unwritten, something buried before language was born. Inside, the choir stood, 12 girls, now 13, Luca at the center, eyes closed, and together they opened their mouths, and heaven blinked. The stars flickered, the wind stilled, time held its breath, and the skies opened, not with wrath, not with fire, but with an answer, a voice, impossibly vast, older than fear, softer than any prayer. It didn't speak in words, it spoke in permission. I have heard you, sing, and let the ones I never held hold me. The final note rose, one that had no pitch, just memory. It carried through blood, through stone, through silence, through every girl who was ever told to be quiet. And then, Luca smiled, her stitches unknotted, the mouth opened, and no scream came, only peace, and light, and release. When the doors of the chapel finally opened again, there were no bodies, only robes, and a single page of music, blank, except for 3 words written in ash. We finished it.